Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Muslims Uncensored with me, the mighty Muslim, Robert Carter, and Old Man Rivers Roshan, who joins me as well. Now, Assalamu alaikum Roshan, it's great to have you.
It's Old Man River, by the way.
Old Man,
It's
what did I
I'm
say?
showing my age now because that's a song my dad used to like, isn't it? By was it Paul Robeson back in the day? Old Man River. Yeah, it's a slavery song, right?
Oh, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yes, perhaps
You see, you wouldn't know this 19th century history.
I might have spared some controversy.
I won't mention your youth and
no
inexperience.
idea. Yeah, well, Roshan, there you go. He knows his history. He was there, after all. But
I was there in the cotton fields of Alabama in the 1900s.
Reporting on it live in action. Well, let's get off with the show then. Move on for that intro. Obviously, there's a lot happening now. We're going to go to international news before bringing it back home to the UK, where there is, of course, a ceasefire deal that's been reached between Israel and the Iran-backed Hezbollah group in Lebanon. There's been a massive reaction to this, of course, as the news has broken, and I think it's mixed feelings over this, especially within the Muslim community. If we start off with the announcement, this is a US-France brokered deal. Joe Biden, the president for now in the White House, has commented on this, basically calling it a historic deal, and he's going to secure peace for the foreseeable future. So let's hear a few comments from him before we react.
Today I have some good news to report from the Middle East. I just spoke with the Prime Minister of Israel and Lebanon. I'm pleased to announce that their governments have accepted the United States proposal to end the devastating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. Under the deal reached today, effective at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time, the fighting across the Lebanese-Israeli border will end. Will end. This is designed to be a permanent cessation of hostilities. What is left of Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations will not be allowed, well, I emphasize, will not be allowed to threaten the security of Israel again. Over the next 60 days, the Lebanese army and state security forces will deploy and take control of their own territory once again. Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure in southern Lebanon will not be allowed to be rebuilt. And over the next 60 days, Israel will gradually withdraw its remaining forces. And civilians on both sides will soon be able to safely return to their communities.
Obviously, Israel as well is calling this a major win. But interestingly, Roshan, there's also on the Iranian axis side, they're also calling this a win as well. If you look at pro-Iran media, for example, they're saying this is a victory for the resistance. So where do you stand, Roshan? How do you perceive this ceasefire?
I'm actually, before I give my opinion, I'm actually looking at 5 pillars, because we did put this question up this morning, a couple of polls, and it seems to be quite mixed. So I've asked what's your views on the Lebanon-Israel ceasefire deal on WhatsApp and Telegram, and about half people are saying it's a victory for Israel, half are saying it's a victory for Hezbollah, and half are saying, or a third I should say, are saying it's a compromise by both sides. So it's fairly mixed, and the same on Twitter and Facebook, I think, as well. I cannot help but feel quite negative about what's happened, simply because it seems as though Hezbollah and the resistance axis in general have delinked Gaza from their own affairs. So they've always said that they would not abandon Gaza, that there will always be a support front for Gaza. As long as Israel are attacking Gaza, then Hezbollah would fire rockets into Israel to bog down soldiers, to make sure that those citizens, Israeli citizens, don't go back to the north of the country, etc. So we haven't really heard from Hezbollah or Iran yet. But their silence is a little bit suspicious too. It makes me inclined to think that what Biden said is probably true in terms of the terms of the deal. Yes, I would say it looks like, for whatever reason, and we can go into that, it looks like Hezbollah have abandoned our brothers and sisters and children in Gaza to their fate.
That's quite a statement to make. I mean, so you genuinely believe that?
I genuinely believe they have. I say that not because it's necessarily my own opinion. It is my own opinion. But I think that the Palestinians that I've spoken to since last night and the Palestinian WhatsApp groups that I've been monitoring, both in English and Arabic, they're kind of saying that. And you have a majority of Palestinians from pro-Iran, anti-Iran, secular, religious, saying that, look, Hezbollah, the resistance axis in general, they've abandoned us. They did more than anyone else. They sacrificed a lot. And we remember what they did over the last year, because it was a hell of a lot more than any Sunni Arab leader did, or any Muslim leader anywhere in the world. However, it's come to the point that for whatever reason, probably because their own resources are depleted, probably because their position in Lebanon is not secure as well, they have their own pressures. They have abandoned the people of Gaza to their fate, which is they've left them at the mercy of these Israeli vultures. And then you have a minority of Palestinians that were saying, okay, we get why they've done this. We don't like it, but we get why they've done this, because they themselves have taken so many hits over the past year. But then you have someone like Abdel Bari Atwan, a very famous Arab journalist. He actually cried. He gave a speech in Arabic yesterday, and he was crying. He says, why has Hezbollah done this? Because they had Israel on the run. The Israeli economy is absolutely collapsing. The citizens are in the hundreds of thousands of their citizens are not able to go back to their homes in the north. The army is depleted and exhausted, and they're literally giving Israel a victory that they haven't won on the battlefield.
Well, again, I wonder about that, because you say that they're giving them a victory. I mean, it's a 60-day truce, which sure is being promoted heavily by the US and Israel, but that's because, you know, the US brokered the deal. Biden probably wants to have some kind of win before leaving office and Trump takes over. So it makes sense that they'd promote it as something bigger than it actually is necessarily. I mean, anything could happen. We could see a return to hostilities any time now. This is just a 60-day truce. This is not a permanent ceasefire or a surrender pact, as it's being portrayed by some. It's just a ceasefire.
It looks to me like a surrender pact, based on what Biden said, and at the moment, Hezbollah haven't corrected the record.
But we shouldn't take what Biden says.
Yeah, but Hezbollah and Iran
Biden's going to call it a surrender deal.
But
perhaps.
Robert, the thing is that Hezbollah has not corrected that record, and nor has Iran. So as long as that silence persists, I think I'm within my rights to say what I'm saying.
I just think that surely there could be an eventual end to the fighting in Gaza. The genocide may come to an end.
I agree. If that happens,
but I don't see a situation where, as Iran would have it, that they would end the genocide in Gaza on their terms. Surely there would have to be a ceasefire in Lebanon first before a ceasefire in Gaza could take hold, surely. Because how would the West and Israel allow a ceasefire in Gaza to happen on Iranian terms, especially when Iran's ability to fight is very, very limited, as we know? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So this idea that it's a surrender pact, or that Lebanon has abandoned the Palestinians, I think is perhaps just harsh, especially as they've done more than anyone else. Including spill a lot of blood.
History.
Well, it's not history. It's happening now. I mean, they've spilled blood now, surely.
No, what I'm trying to say is, like, if there is a pact in Gaza, if there's a ceasefire in Gaza within the next few days or week, and Biden did actually say he's going to push for that. Let's see if that happens. If that ceasefire happens, I'm actually willing to eat my words and say, actually, you know, there was some grand plan, and there was sense behind signing that agreement. I agree that 100%. And we'll come on next week, inshallah, and we'll see. And if they've done that by next week, or it could be even 2 weeks, 3 weeks, then I'm quite happy to row back on my words. I'm just telling you what it feels like now to me at the moment.
Yes.
Let me. I talked to. Yeah. Go on. Do you wanna?
Well, no. I was just going to say, you're talking about how it feels to you. Let me tell you how it feels to Ben Gvir. You know, the extremist Israeli. He's a minister. He's a government minister in this extreme. I think it's like a war cabinet that Netanyahu's got together. He actually referred to this as not a ceasefire. It's a return to the concept of silence for silence. This agreement does not meet the goal of the war to return residents to the north safely home. This is a historic mistake. So he actually believes that this is essentially a surrender on Israel's part, and that they haven't achieved their objectives, and they won't achieve their objectives. And the fact is that the deal's based on a UN resolution 1701, which came about at the end of the 2006 war, which most people looking at it say Hezbollah won that war. and that no one actually kept to the 1701 agreement anyway.
Yeah.
So the idea that we've now gone back to the 1701 UN agreement, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Israel hasn't achieved anything in Lebanon. So how can we say that this is a humiliating defeat for Lebanon or for Iran? I think that's still a little bit too much. I get what you say about the abandonment issue.
I mean, Hezbollah hasn't been defeated.
Have they abandoned Gaza? What if they resume fighting tomorrow? That's not an abandonment.
Well, then we can change our position, but they won't, will they? Because they've signed a ceasefire deal.
Yes, that's
and look, I mean, Ben Gvir, like Smotrich, both in the cabinet, they're extremists even by Israeli standards, and that's saying something. The reason why he's upset is because he wanted Israel to finish Hezbollah. And Hamas.
Which they haven't done.
So that's what I'm saying to you, Robert. I'm saying that on the battlefield, and even in the political arena to a certain... Well, no, I would say on the battlefield, Hezbollah have done very well, I think. Because obviously they're the weaker party compared to Israel. Yet, they've killed a lot of Israeli soldiers. They've prevented Israel from making much progress in Lebanon. Okay, they've taken a lot of hits, especially with their leadership and their commanders, and lots of civilian hits as well. And I think ultimately that's where the pressure is coming on in Hezbollah, because they live in this Lebanese context where a lot of people in Lebanon are probably anti-Palestinian, or they're anti-Hezbollah, and they just want to live a happy life and a comfortable life. They're not really interested in resistance or fighting Israel. So there's a lot of pressure internally on Hezbollah. But yeah, the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying is because I think it's a bit like the First World War. I love going back to history because I just love history. In the First World War, Germany wasn't really defeated on the battlefield, but they lost that war politically, and that led to the rise of Hitler, because the Germans could see that it was the politicians that sold the soldiers out. And I see this in a little bit of a similar context, in the sense that clearly Iran and Hezbollah don't have the stomach for an attritional war going on indefinitely, which is what probably would bring Israel down. For whatever reason, they don't have the stomach for that, or the money for that, or the wealth, the treasure, the bodies, etc. So they've decided to cut their losses now and perhaps hope to refuel, reshape, recover, and fight another day.
It just sounds like a defeatist narrative, doesn't it? I mean, you're basically going along with the Israel line that they've won.
No, it's not the Israel. I don't give it. I don't give two hoots for the Israel. I don't give it two hoots. I haven't even read what the Israelis are saying, Robert. This is my own analysis based on. Look, the fact is that these vultures have been swarming around Gaza for a year now. You've seen what they've done, and Hezbollah were bogging down the Israelis in the north. They were bogging down battalions and the whole army to a certain extent in the north, taking the heat off Gaza to a certain extent. Now there seems to be no pressure whatsoever on Israel. You got Trump coming in, who will surely say, finish the job in Gaza. So my worry is that the people of Gaza have been left completely exposed now. That is my essential point. I'm not talking about the sacrifices that the people of Lebanon have given, which they undoubtedly have, which quite frankly puts the Sunni world to shame. It does. Speaking here as a Sunni Muslim myself, it puts the Sunni world to shame. But the fact is, they've signed this deal. It looks like a surrender deal to me. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not interested in scoring points. I'm quite happy to be wrong. But it looks very much like Hezbollah have abandoned the Gazans to the devil, basically.
And how do you think it's going to play out now? What are your predictions? How do you see the political landscape turning
out? I think Israel will accelerate its destruction of Gaza and its genocide.
So you don't see a push for some kind of ceasefire now? You don't think that's a sign that ceasefire in Lebanon might be a ceasefire in Gaza kind of thing?
I think not. I think there's a chance, because there's probably a lot that we don't know as well going on behind the scenes. Maybe, just maybe, Iran and Hezbollah sign that deal because they feel there is a genuine possibility of a ceasefire in Gaza. But then I think it should have been announced at the same time.
Yeah.
It should have been literally announced at the same time. Then nobody would be complaining, because we can all see that Israel is battering Lebanon, and we don't want that to continue. But they look as though they've given away far too much without getting much in return. What they've got in return is the survival of Hezbollah and the survival of Iran at the expense of our brothers and sisters and children in Gaza.
Well, I don't know if that's true, because at the end of the day, like I say, they've gone back to what even Ben Gvir can see, to his great frustration, to what was there prior to October the 7th. So nothing has actually changed in Lebanon for Israel. They're talking about, Hezbollah retreating behind the Litani River, but that was what was agreed after 2006. What happened since then?
You're talking about Lebanon. I'm talking about Gaza. I agree with you when it comes to Lebanon. Nothing's changed. But in Gaza, it definitely has. They're exposed with no one to protect them. Because where is the border? The only, it's like a Kamal. I was talking to Kamal in our correspondent in Lebanon today, and he was saying, look, just look at the geography of Israel and Gaza. Gaza has two borders, one with Israel and one with Egypt. And then Egypt is surrounded to the north by Lebanon, to the east by Jordan, and then to the west by the sea, right? Jordan's not going to attack Israel. They're not going to lift a finger. Egypt definitely isn't going to lift a finger for the Palestinians. So who is? Traditionally, it's been the major support front, which has been Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now it looks like Israel has neutralized that.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, basically, the way I see it is the way Arab-Israel wars tend to play out is there are truces and ceasefires during the fight, during the war. That's something which is normal. We've seen it many times in past conflicts. It's a 60-day truce. Any little change in the situation could return to hostilities. I think that if, for example, after 60 days, if Israel doesn't withhold its end of the bargain, then I can fully see Iran and its proxies returning to attacks on Israel. Absolutely. I think that that's something that they'll be preparing for. Sure, they might be going away licking their wounds. They've taken some serious hits. But does that mean that Iran and its proxies are going to give up on ever targeting Israel, like Biden's saying? He's basically saying that that's it. They're not going to be threatening Israel from the north ever again. I don't see that as being the case at all. I think that that's Western propaganda, pushing this deal to be as some kind of amazing big change on the ground. I don't think it is. I think it's a temporary truce, and Israel has to hold up its end of the bargain, which it never does. And perhaps they're just licking their wounds in anticipation for both sides to return to throwing missiles at each other anyway. So I just think that it's a mistake to jump on the bandwagon that Israel's pushing, that they've won some kind of victory here, or this ceasefire is totally on their terms. I think both sides have been fighting for a long time. Both sides are a bit exhausted, and both sides need this 60-day truce to lick their wounds. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this happened just after the ICC issued its arrest warrants, nor do I think it's a coincidence that we're just about to see a regime change in Washington, that this ceasefire, this truce, has come into effect as well. Perhaps they're giving negotiations a chance in anticipation of Trump taking over. This could be their last chance to try and work something out in Gaza, perhaps before Trump takes over and then escalates the whole thing. And I think that there are people on both sides who perhaps want to give a ceasefire a chance before Trump comes in. Maybe it won't work, but perhaps this is the last.
Well, Robert, I'll be honest. I hope you're right and I'm wrong. Honestly, because I'm not here to score points, because this is too big an issue to kind of play about. Oh, I was right, you're wrong, whatever. I think you spoke. I'm not interested in that at all.
You spoke to a number of Palestinians, didn't you?
Yeah, obviously, I'm kind of reflecting what they were saying.
Yes.
That's what's coming through in my words. I saw something else which was very interesting. I don't have much more to say apart from this, and it's that. The stakes for the people of that region obviously are much higher than they are for us. So for us, when we take on the Israel lobby here and we talk the truth about what Israel is and support the Palestinians, we're risking perhaps our jobs or our reputation, perhaps in extreme circumstances, jail. Okay. Over there, they're risking their life, their limbs, their property, their wealth, etc. So the stakes are much higher. So I do understand people that say, oh, look, you're an armchair warrior and, you're not in their position, you can't judge them. There's some truth to that. But all I would say is that I'm actually trying to reflect what I'm saying, some of the opinions of people who are in that position. And what I'm saying now is not just entirely my made-up opinion. But if people can understand why Hezbollah has been driven to a ceasefire because of the amazing and high price that the people of Lebanon are paying, then I don't think we can justify a ceasefire with Israel in this country, when it's only words that we're saying at the end of the day, and it's only our reputation and our jobs and our reputation in the sight of, Zionists, by the way, themselves, and our jobs and perhaps our liberty in the most extreme circumstances that we're risking. It's not on the same scale. So, yeah, what I'm trying to say is that no to normalization with Israel in this country. And for us, we have no excuse whatsoever. Perhaps the people of that region have an excuse when they're literally dying. We're not dying. So what excuse do we have?
Sure. Now, continuing on with our coverage of international affairs, we're going to move further east towards Pakistan now, where there's been major protests taking place, some killings, in fact, over demands for the release of the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan. I've not been so focused on this story simply because I've been elsewhere, but I know you've been covering it for the past couple of days. The situation appears to be calming down
a bit
now. But obviously this comes after days of protests, massive mobilization from huge segments of Pakistani population, and some deaths as well. So what's going on there?
Yeah, so, I mean, yesterday, I think we were all saying, could this be a new revolution? Could this be like a Bangladesh-style revolution? Because they'd cut the internet, they were shooting protesters, cutting off highways, trying to prevent Imran Khan supporters, who is the single most popular politician in the country, despite the fact that he's in jail now. I think a lot of people in Pakistan are just sick of the army and sick of the ISI, and disappearing people, the army with their brutal tactics, trying to run the country and just saying that, we're the bulwark against India. I think fewer and fewer people are buying that idea now and giving them a free pass. Okay, you might be a bulwark against India. You might be the biggest employer in the country, the single most organized force in the country, but that doesn't give you a free ride, a free pass to rig elections, to imprison political opponents, to disappear people off the street, to shoot on sight. So I think the army and the ISI, eventually something's going to explode there. They've had it their own way for many years. But they should know that the fate that awaits them is the fate of Sheikh Hasina if this goes on too much longer. So, I mean, 5 Pillars is banned in Pakistan. We can't access. We're banned in India as well. So I mean, it's just such a shame. I mean, it looks like they have called off the protest for whatever reasons. So things are calming down.
I think the PTI...
but the army should be on notice.
Yeah, I think the PTI issued a statement saying that the protests are being called off temporarily simply because of the brutality of what's been going on there, the crackdown and the killings. Obviously, that could seriously escalate, especially if, like you say, they're desperately holding on to power, they're scared of a revolution, they've seen what's going on in Bangladesh, and they'll do whatever it takes to avoid a repeat of that in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Things could get very nasty. From what I understand, the political situation in Pakistan is much more divisive, different political camps vying for power.
So, traditionally, it's been run by the army. They're the major power in Pakistan, as well as the ISI, the intelligence service. These are the real powers in Pakistan. And then you have the feudal landlords, the Bhutto family, the Sharif family, and they play like musical chairs where they take power, but ultimately they're still subservient to the army chief and the ISI. And Imran Khan was a kind of he was a bit of an outlier, I think is the term. He was someone from the outside, obviously a wealthy aristocrat in his own right, Islamically orientated, but with many faults as well. But he seemed like he had many faults, but he seemed like the most genuine of the civilian politicians in Pakistan. And he seems to have challenged the army's supremacy to a certain extent, and he's paying the price for that. Yeah.
Well,
it's a shame because Pakistan should be one of our most powerful countries. It has the natural resources, the geographical significance. It has the nuclear weapons. It has a young, big population. A lot of people are very educated there as well. It should be one of the powerhouses of the Muslim world rather than the failed state that it is.
Yes, and I know that there's a lot of trouble in that part of the world now because we've also seen situation escalating in India. There's violence against Muslims happening right now. There's also an escalation in Bangladesh as well,
Yeah, it's
somewhere
worth
where
mentioning.
Dili just returned from. Do you want to perhaps go? Where should we go to?
Should we go to Bangladesh first?
I
Because I've
think
got more to say
Bangladesh.
about that. So Bangladesh, I was having a word with Dilly before the show, getting the lowdown on this. But yeah, so basically, there's this Hindutva group in Bangladesh. It's called ISKCON, which is basically Modi. They're Modi's agents in Bangladesh, and obviously the lying Hindutva media and Indian media are saying that there's a Hindu genocide going on in Bangladesh, which is complete rubbish, complete absolute rubbish. But we know how they lie because we've had experience of that ourselves, haven't we? You know, and how they turn a blind eye to anti-Muslim lynchings, etc. And they're probably the biggest lying media in the whole world, maybe apart from the Israelis. But even the Israelis have a little bit of professionalism and sophistication to their lying, whereas the Indian media, they literally make up stuff. Anyway, yesterday, this Hindutva group lynched a judge, a Muslim judge in Bangladesh, and killed him. And the Indian media straight away said that no, he was the judge or he was the lawyer for a Hindutva guy, and it was Islamists who lynched him. So they're literally lying about it. So this guy, Saiful Islam, I think his name was called, he was a lawyer, not a judge, I think. And he was lynched in broad daylight by these Hindutva fanatics in Bangladesh. And now no one knows what's going to happen. This could actually spark communal violence. It could spark attacks against Hindus who are a minority in Bangladesh. So obviously India have lost. They've lost Bangladesh. They've lost their agent in Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina. And now it looks like they're going to all means to spark trouble within Bangladesh to destabilize the country.
Yes, I know that the situation in India is also tense and is linked to that simply because, as we've seen from the violence that occurred here in Leicester and Birmingham, the Hindutva ideology is an extremist ideology. It's radicalizing Hindus all over the world, across the Indian diaspora. It's radicalizing them, and it's sectarian. So it preaches hatred of Muslims, of Islam. It's a supremacist ideology. So it believes in establishing, I think, or we've heard some of their preachers talking about establishing a Hindu Rashtra or something like that, a supremacist state, basically, where Hinduism is on top and all other minorities are oppressed or forced out.
Yeah.
And it's led to a lot of violence there.
Yeah.
There's been violence recently over a mosque. There was a mosque survey being done in a region in the north of India where they're trying to establish if it was originally built over a Hindu temple or something like that. This is happening all the time, and it led to violence, which I think has claimed some lives there.
Yeah, I think the Indian authorities killed 5 Muslims trying to defend this mosque. Yeah, this is happening all over, especially in northern India, where they come up with these bogus excuses to demolish mosques. And usually the excuse is they've been built without permission or they were built over a Hindu temple. And in the vast majority, if not all of these cases, these are just bogus claims because we all know the ideology of Modi and the Hindutva is to eradicate Islam from India. And so they make up these ridiculous conspiracy theories like love jihad, land jihad, you know, whatever. And then you have these, you know, kind of lynchings over selling cow meat, and it's absolutely horrifying what's happening to Muslims in India on a daily basis. And you should check our Twitter and Telegram feeds where we put most of this stuff. Sometimes we can't put it on other social media because it's too graphic, but yeah, it's one of the stories of our times, and one of the story again that the Western media is completely ignoring, the oppression of Muslims in India.
Yeah, it's bubbling away, and you wonder what it's going to lead to, especially with the situation
Holocaust,
over there.
obviously.
Yeah.
That's what it's leading to, is a Holocaust of Muslims in India.
Yeah, quite possibly. I mean, there's been talk recently, I think even Donald Trump was tweeting about apparent oppression of Hindus in Bangladesh, for example, and how they're facing persecution, especially now that there's been a revolution there, and you know, it's been described as
there's no Hindu genocide going on.
Yeah, but
if India would have it, maybe they would like to spark that so that they could have a narrative about how Muslims in Bangladesh are lynching Hindus. But yeah.
Well, I know that they wanted a pretext, an excuse to go into Kashmir and to violently put down locals there. And now there's talk from Kashmir, the Indian occupied part of Jammu and Kashmir, that they're trying to again bring a lot of Hindu migration back to the region, to upset the demographics, to try and basically turn it.
I don't know. I don't know. I should ask Dilly this question. I don't know if India's plan eventually may be to even try to invade Bangladesh or take part of Bangladesh, annex some territory. Who knows?
Yeah,
you never know.
Quite possibly. Quite possibly. Well, we are keeping an eye on the situation and we will continue to report on it as it escalates, but it's been coming in thick and fast. I wanted to come over to the UK now because there's two important stories, I think, which we should mention. They've kind of been not given the attention that perhaps they deserve simply because of things happening elsewhere, but they are very, very big stories. So the first is a Preston mosque, a town or city in the north of England, which has basically been slammed for hosting a meeting where a bunch of Zionists showed up. That's basically what the story's about. You reported on this, I believe, and know the details of it, so perhaps you could fill us in. I was quite disappointed to see the response that you received after communicating with the mosque about this.
Yes, this is Quwwat al-Islam Mosque in Preston, and the reason why people are upset with them, the local community is upset with them, is because they held a meeting with blatant Zionists in the masjid a few months ago. So these guys, I think it's from the Jewish Representative Council in the north or the Greater Manchester area, and they include several hardcore pro-Israel supporters, some of them who have made crass comments about, pro-Palestinians, etc. So these guys met inside that mosque. So obviously, I think we have an unwritten policy in the Muslim community that we do not normalize with supporters of Israel under any circumstances, and certainly not in the house of Allah. So this meeting happened, and the mosque have not really made public statements about it, despite having closed-door meetings with members of their congregation. There was an open letter from certain members of the congregation saying that it was outrageous that they were involved, and they were invited to the mosque. Now, the response from the mosque is that they would never have invited these guys into the mosque if they knew they were Zionists. Now, I understand that they were given a full list of people, names, before the meeting took place. But the mosque official, or the guy who arranged the visit, who's actually a Muslim council interfaith official, his name's Mukhtar Master, he basically said that he was distracted by an event which was taking place at the mosque, and also by the deaths of two local boys. So he was grieving, he was distracted, he didn't do his homework, and they came to the mosque, he didn't know who they were. He was also a bit upset at Five Pillars for carrying the story, because he feels as though we are impugning the reputation of a house of Allah, and that we shouldn't have done that, especially because it was an innocent mistake and they're blameless. So that's what the story's about. What do you think about it, Robert?
Well, I must admit, I think that, I just think that it was such a massive scandal, if you think about it. It was totally avoidable, should never have happened. And the only people that are left humiliated by this is the establishment itself that hosted the event and this individual who has responded to you. And for them to turn around in the statement, I kind of got the impression they had a bit of an attitude for us for carrying the story.
Yeah.
Well, we're just reporting the facts. And the fact is that you guys have hosted Zionists. Now, I know that there was an excuse provided, and it was a very heart-wrenching excuse for sure. But the fact of the matter is that if it's your job to do, a Google search on who these people are, there is no real excuse for that. It should never have happened. There is a genocide going on in Gaza. We do not want Zionists, whether they be Jewish or not, coming into our community, into our houses of Allah, and desecrating it, quite frankly. I think it's appalling that this happened. It should never have happened. And people have to own up and take responsibility.
Do you think he should resign?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he should
it's
resign.
a resignable offence. Correct me if I'm wrong. There was no apology.
No apology whatsoever.
So no apology whatsoever. Not to us, but to the community that they let down. They totally let that community down. And from what I understand, because we have people in Preston who we know personally and are very well connected in that community, it's created quite a fuss because do you know what? There are Muslims in this country. The overwhelming majority, if not all of them, they don't want Zionists in their mosque, especially during a genocide. It's as simple as that. And if mosque leaders or people organising events are too naive politically to understand, you know what, you may want to double check who these people are. You shouldn't be in that position. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I was really, really angry when I read this story, Roshan. I really was. And the response, as well as the story itself, really bored my blood, I have to say. I don't know how it was for you reporting.
I think it's an arrogant response. I think, obviously, I think the whole situation could possibly have been diffused with an apology, because I think Muslims are quite forgiving. And if they'd held their hands up and said, look, we made a mistake here. We should have done our homework.
Yeah.
We didn't know they were Zionists, but we should have known that. And we made a mistake. Please forgive us. Let's move on. It won't happen again. If they'd taken that attitude, there wouldn't have been much of an issue, I don't think. And Muslims would have been forgiving towards them. But now they've dug their heels in and they've made it a much bigger issue than it actually was, possibly. And I must admit, I didn't write this story, but obviously I oversaw this story and approved this story. And I found the response arrogant. And I think the person who arranged this meeting should offer his resignation, because the stakes are too high. There's a genocide happening in Palestine. Now, I believe the person that organized the meeting is actually a pro-Palestine activist himself and has organized demonstrations in Preston on behalf of Palestine. So I'm not saying he's a closet Zionist or anything, but what he's done here is, as you say, desecrate the house of Allah in a way.
And he's failed.
And that's a serious thing. He's failed his congregation.
Yeah.
And I think he should offer his resignation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the very least, he should offer a sincere apology. And I think he should offer his resignation. Now, the community might reject that and forgive him and allow him to go on, but I think he should offer his resignation because he's made a very, very big mistake here.
And that's the thing. This is not like a surprise in a way. What I mean by that is it's well documented and known and has been warned about extensively for many, many years, the problems of interfaith actions in this country. There are organizations that are trying to weasel in Zionism into the Muslim community, and they're using an interfaith industry in order to do that. This has been warned about not just by Five Pillars, but by Muslim groups of respect and high status across the community for years and years and years. And I'm sorry, but if any religious institution in this country is not aware of the red flags that are waving in your face when you get an email saying, oh, I'd like to bring some random
Jewish community members
to your mosque who you've never met before for no reason other than random interfaith initiatives or whatever, I mean, seriously, you've got to clue yourselves up. Because this should never, ever have happened. And it's appalling that it's happened now, especially during a genocide. And like you said, it's an offence that should have some consequences, quite frankly, because this cannot be allowed to happen again.
I think that there's another point that I would like to make, a wider point, not specifically about this mosque, but the general attitude of Muslim leaders in this country. Whenever we've done whatever you want to call them, exposés or whatever, on Muslim institutions that have been caught red-handed doing bad stuff, like having tea and biscuits with Zionists, or other organizations that have been giving zakat money to prevent supporters, or, pro-Israel, that kind of red-handed stuff. What they tend to do is they don't take responsibility. They just shoot the messenger. They deflect, they weaponize their own minions and supporters against the messenger, which is often us, in an attempt to deflect from the real issues. And they say things like, oh, how many souls have you converted to Islam? How much money have you raised for the needy in the Muslim world? And it's true that a lot of these organizations have done exactly that. But does that give them a free pass to do whatever they want? There is a sense of unaccountability and impunity amongst our Muslim leaders of our institutions all over the country, quite frankly. And just because they're in positions of power and they may do some genuine good, that does not mean that they are still not accountable to their congregation and they should not answer difficult questions. And there's this feeling, alhamdulillah, I think it is dissipating with the generations. I think the younger generation is more accountable than the older generation was. But there's this feeling that it's, do not question me. Who the hell are you to question me? Just because I run a masjid, or I run a charity. Who the hell are you to question me? You're nobody. That's the arrogant attitude that I see, and it needs to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who are we? We're journalists, and that's our job at the end of the day. And just because we're a Muslim news organization doesn't mean we're only going to report on positive Muslim stories. We're also going to talk about stories where people in our community let us down.
It's flabbergasting. The arrogance is flabbergasting. We were talking last week about when the Ummah gives you money, it's an amana, it's a trust, and it should weigh heavily on your shoulders. And if they give you money, whether you're a mosque or a charity or a Muslim news organization, they have the right to ask you questions about how that money is being spent or how your organization is being run. And you can't just be arrogant and deflect. It's like me, if like one of our donors says to me, Roshan, why'd you do that? Then I have to answer because he's paying my wages. Do you know what I mean? He's paying my wages. I can't just say, oh, go away. And I'm not, I have to answer that person. I have to treat that person with politeness and the respect that is due.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there's another story which you've been heavily involved in here in the UK. It's a Sainsbury's, I don't know what to call it. It's a pork scandal. I don't know. It's a story related to the pork section in the meat aisle of a Sainsbury's here in England. And you realised, someone sent you this picture of it being right next door to the halal meat section. So the images are on screen now for you to view. Now, what you said in the tweet was that Sainsbury's in Bedfordshire have put the pork section right next to the halal meat section, with the pork products literally touching the halal. Are they deliberately trying to antagonise Muslims, or are we reading too much into this? Now, it created quite a storm online, quite a reaction, but surprisingly, a lot of Muslims actually weren't very impressed with that tweet. They actually were basically saying that you're making too much out of it, you're reading too much into it. So I'll read a couple of reactions to you. It says exactly that. So Alif says,
this is a 5 Pillars tweet. We have to take responsibility for it. Collective responsibility.
I was away, brothers and sisters, at the time, so I'm not taking any responsibility for this. But I will give my opinion shortly. But let's just read out a few from Twitter before we do. You're reading too much into this. It's all wrapped and sealed, not like raw meat next to each other. What's wrong with picking up the halal meat? Or maybe you want more engagement on Twitter. There is a large and well-stocked halal section. If you don't like pork section, then don't buy anything from it. I doubt Sainsbury's wants to antagonize you if there is a large halal section. And then there were a few supportive ones of it as well. There were people basically saying, it's true and sharing your outrage there. But a lot of people basically saying, who cares? What's the big deal? Get over it, Roshan. So how would you like to respond to that?
I think the Twitter feed was... at least half the responses in the Twitter feed are right-wingers. The far right saying,
well, some of you just want to get out of the country.
Go back to Afghanistan or ban halal meat or something.
Yeah, exactly like that. But they were outraged.
And these are the same people that are going to the curry houses in Birmingham on a Saturday night, and asking for a chicken korma. Yeah, anyway, look, this is Dunstable in Bedfordshire in a Sainsbury's. So we were sent this picture. When I saw it, I must admit my initial reaction was outrage, because it's taken the mickey, man. I mean, look, literally a pork section right next to a halal section. I mean, it's presumably like other Sainsbury's in the country, so it has a long aisle. So they don't have to put the pork section right next to the halal section. They could put it, a little bit further down. And in most supermarkets I've been to, even there, I know that they're wrapped in cellophane or whatever it is, but they are touching each other. And I mean, would they put a kosher section next to a pork section? I don't think so. So I think this is either deliberate or it is just insensitive and offensive. I'm not saying it's haram or anything like that. I'm just saying it's highly insensitive and it shouldn't happen. I also think a lot of Muslims they're happy with crumbs in this country. You pat a Muslim on the head, and a lot of Muslims in this country, they're just happy that they have a halal meat section. They'd probably be happy if someone abused them and get distant Islamophobic abuse as long as they can eat their halal meat. It's like, I'm not happy with. I consider myself an equal citizen of this country compared to any other Jew or Hindu or Christian or atheist, etc., etc. And I want equal treatment on every single issue because I pay my bloody taxes. And I tell you what, I probably pay more taxes than your average patriot in this country. Okay. So I have a right to demand equality and to be respected. And that is my attitude. So don't put pork next to halal. It's offensive. I don't like it.
You're not asking for equality though. You're asking for pork to get ditched somewhere else, right?
I want Sainsbury's to stop selling pork in an ideal world.
I must admit,
and alcohol.
I do agree that Sainsbury's perhaps a bit insensitive here. It just looks a bit silly that they would do that now that you've highlighted it. But at the end of the day, it is wrapped up, Roshan. I mean, don't you think you should get over it a little bit? Have we not got bigger issues?
No, I still want to see pork.
Basically, you're acting like someone's rubbing a fat bit of bacon in your face, to be honest with you. It's not on that level, is it?
I'm trying to give you another example. It's like if you have a kosher section, and next to the kosher section, you have a book section with books about the Holocaust on it or something like that. It's just insensitive. I know it's a bad example, but it's just insensitive, and I don't like it. And they should be more sensitive to their Muslim customers.
to your feelings.
I assume that the fact that they stock halal meat probably means that they have quite a few Muslim customers going in there, so they should just be more sensitive to them.
Do you just think it's just a harmless mistake?
No.
It's a victimless crime.
Well, if it is, change it. I'm not sure.
I mean, basically, it's a victimless crime, isn't it? I mean, you're acting like you've been personally wounded by this.
Well, I'm not saying it's the biggest story in the world.
I don't see anyone forcing pork chops down your
No, but some people are saying,
do you know what I mean?
Some people are saying, oh, haven't you got other stories to focus on? Yeah, we do focus on all those other stories. But it's an interesting topic about whether Muslims are quite happy to be second-class citizens and to be trolled. It's basically first-class trolling, isn't it, by Sainsbury's? Are we happy to be mocked and trolled? Or are we going to stand up and say, no, this is wrong, it's offensive?
Why didn't you
We want you to move it, Sainsbury's. And Sainsbury's, I tell you what, they haven't even responded to this. And I know they're aware of it because they were at it in so many times. And they're responding to every Tom, Dick and Harry who's upset about losing, some coins behind the banana aisle or something like that. But they won't respond to this.
Should we stage a protest? I feel like you've got something.
No, I don't want to protest, but I think they should just change it. I think they should change it. If they don't change it, then I think we should boycott the store.
I mean, I think I think it's like, for example, I know they do halal sausages. There's chicken or beef halal sausages. I've seen them. And if they were next to pork sausages, you could perhaps make a harmless mistake, pick up the wrong sausage.
That's what Jamal, our technical guy here, was saying, that he went to had a similar experience in a supermarket, not this one, and the pork was right next to the halal, and he actually picked up the pork thinking it was halal.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's another reason why I'm right and you're wrong.
I get that, but again, it's a bit.
Are you offended by it? You say pork right next to halal. I think it's the white man coming out in you.
Offended. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit inconvenient and inconsiderate, isn't it? But am I really?
I think it's the white man coming out in you. You know why? It's because from birth, people that were born Muslim, they have this natural aversion to pork, and it's like, oh, pork. Even my kids, when I say a pig, they say, oh, a pig. That's our natural reaction. I think being a white man yourself, you just don't have that, and you're, obviously you've been Muslim for about 15 years now, but the first 15 years of your life, 16 years you weren't Muslim. I don't think it's in your DNA, this aversion to pork.
So it's a race thing. You want to make this about race. So
I think it's completely about race.
People. Okay. So you want to make this a race war. Okay. Well, tell me what you think, brothers and sisters.
I can't believe you're not offended by it. I can't believe I'm letting you get away with this.
I totally accept that it would, in an ideal world, be well away from our halal meat. But the fact that it's contained, no one's forcing you to eat it, no one's rubbed a bullet with pig's oil and shot you with it. I just think you're being a bit of a crybaby and a wuss. Perhaps if you'd gone to the manager and just had a conversation with him, he would have dealt with it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, do you really want to cry about this? Basically, I just think you're being.
Well, I did think I did
making a mountain out of a molehill.
I did do a poll because obviously
What's the community saying?
the comments were quite mixed on Facebook and Twitter. So I did a poll on WhatsApp and Telegram, and actually 70% were saying it was offensive.
Offensive,
and
okay.
30% were saying no, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. So,
Okay, fine.
so I think most Muslims are with me, but obviously the kind of I'm happy with being a second-class citizen Muslims like yourself are not with me.
All right. Well, there you go, brothers and sisters. Tell us what you think in the comment section, as you have been doing. I'll be very interested to see who you think won.
I wonder if that 30% was
Just me clicking.
converts who ate pork for the first 20 years of their life, and they just don't have this natural aversion to it.
I will address this issue because I know Roshan's trying to force me, pig-loving Rob. Basically, one thing I will say is I'm glad I gave it up. It's a very unhealthy meat. I don't eat pork. I don't miss it at all. And actually, once you give it up, this is a message to any English white people who are watching. It's good because when you give it up, you actually notice how disgusting it is. Like, for example,
Even the smell.
Yeah, the smell, exactly. So when I stopped eating this swine, this dirty meat, now if I smell it, it actually makes me feel a bit like yuck. Like I can smell something disgusting. I go, oh, that's pork. So it's easy to identify because you just smell it. That's how you know the proof that it's just a dirty meat. So I do urge everyone watching, whether you're Muslim or not, to be honest with you, just stay away from this dirty swine, disgusting meat. It is toxic and poison.
But you're quite happy to have it next to the halal section.
Well, I'm not happy about it, but I just think you're being a crybaby, to be honest with you. I just think you should get a life, if I'm being frank. Well, let's talk about more comments. We're approaching the end of the show now. We've run out of topics. But one thing that I did want to talk about was the reactions that we've received on YouTube last week. We had really good engagement, really good reactions. I'm going to read out a bunch of comments now. I actually have a list here, but I'll bring up the YouTube as well. So let's go through the first comment. So what I noticed was there's a lot of feedback about our performance, Roshan. There's a lot of people saying things like, Zach here, what can we do to improve the show? That's what we asked at the end of the show. Sack Roshan, make Robert the editor, was a suggestion by
Well, if you want
Zach.
5 pillars to fall apart.
That was a great suggestion. So that's why I put that as number one. We got one here from Asad who said, another brilliant The Robert Carter Show.
So you just chose the comment. I did notice, by the way, that most of the comments actually were bigging you up
Pro-Rob.
more than me.
Pro-Rob,
That's true. Can I just say a few things about that? One
well, hang on a minute. I haven't read them all out yet. Let's just put the evidence on the page. So Master Wakas also says, I love this show so much. My favorite show on YouTube. And I watch lots of podcasts. The chemistry between Robert and Roshan is unreal. It's unreal. It's unbelievable. And Robert is hilarious, he says, with 2 love hearts right at the end there. You're flirting with me, Wakas. Thank you very much. But he thinks I'm hilarious. I agree. Everyone else seems to as well. Do you want to issue a response to those?
I think it's just a white thing. I think
comments.
I think it's white privilege. I think Muslims have got this thing about
it's
white
a race
people.
thing for you.
I think Muslims have got this thing about a young white person converting to Islam. They think that it validates their religion.
That's right.
Whereas I have a position whereby Islam is perfect, despite any race whatsoever.
I think you've got an inferiority complex. You're obsessed with my skin color. No one else is. Everyone else thinks I'm great because of my personality.
I don't.
Jokes.
I actually agree that
I'm brilliant.
Dilly and you are more popular than me. No, I agree. I agree 100%.
What a confession!
And you know what? I have no problem with that whatsoever because I do not seek popularity.
So will you?
And I never have. Honestly, people don't believe me when I say this.
Will you resign as editor?
I haven't got because.
Will you resign as editor?
I'm better at you than as an editor.
Yeah, but you have no mandate.
I'm better at Dilly than
you have no mandate.
I'm good at. No, my mandate is the mandate that. MBS has or MBZ self-appointed mandate.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I agree that. Look, the reason why I think we're a good team, and I'm being really honest here because it takes a man to to admit that you might be less popular than somebody else.
No one else compliments Roshan, so he has to compliment himself.
We have a good team here because we're all good at certain things, and I'm good at managing, I think, and directing and bossing people about.
Says you.
And giving orders. I'm excellent
The
at doing
ones who
that.
he manages wouldn't say that, but yeah.
Robert is good at, exploiting his white privilege and fooling people into believing that he's cleverer than he is.
Conning.
And Dilly has this young kind of vibe going on. Although he's not that young anymore, but he. I've seen the grey hairs, Dilly, but he appeals to a younger audience, and his podcasts do kill it.
He has a personality cult
And
surrounding
he
him,
has a way of
which
engaging.
we benefit from.
Yeah, he's built this cult of personality around him, and he'd be a good cult leader.
Him and his documentaries, yeah.
No, but
MMA.
I'm quite happy to be in the background and make things tick over, and to give you and Dilly a platform which, frankly, you don't deserve, and to boost you.
Okay.
And I think it works well that way. I think I should be more popular than Robert and Dilly, personally.
Based on what?
But based on my intelligence and my eloquence,
Your
and
unlikability.
and yeah, I think that's a good point. I think I'm probably not as likable as you and Dilly. I think you and Dilly are
not.
likable people.
Yeah, you're definitely.
I think the people that like me are the people that know me. The people that don't know me or who have or who have met me once or twice,
I don't know.
They generally don't like me that much because I'm an acquired taste.
I mean, I've met you and I hated you the second I met you. You were all right when I watched you on
Well,
TV. But yeah, when I met you, the opinion dropped. So I don't know about that.
So yeah, you're more popular than me, Robert.
So that's well
For
established.
stupid reasons, but you are.
That's very well established. So I wanted to bring that up to begin with. Now, the next thing that people were commenting about in this comment section was, who is this grey-haired old lefty, this nameless lefty that we mentioned?
We don't want to offend.
And there was a sort of debate, who is it? Some people said Karl Marx. Some people said...
It's JC and it's not Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it was. So it's Jeremy Corbyn, basically. Let's get to the bottom of this, because this has come up again and again, and
We
people
just
want to know.
antagonise our viewers from each other.
What is your problem with
No,
Jeremy Corbyn?
I don't think I want to engage
actually.
you.
He's all right, actually. Leave him alone. What is your problem?
Well, this is not Robert behind the.
What is your problem, Roshan?
When the camera's turned off, Robert will change his tune.
What is your problem?
Let's
with
not
Jeremy
talk
Corbyn?
about Jeremy Corbyn.
This sweet, old, innocent man who's done nothing wrong to nobody. He loves life.
No
loves
comment.
courgettes even
No
more.
comment. There will
What is your problem?
there will be an opportunity to comment in future episodes because it will naturally come up.
No, let's deal with it now, Roshan. What is your problem?
My problem with Jeremy Corbyn is that he had a historic opportunity as Labour leader to take this country in a different direction, and he blew it by listening to the right wing of his party, the Blairites. So by weak leadership. I also have a problem with him because he has thrown several of his close friends under the bus, like Ken Livingstone, and I don't like people who throw their friends under the bus.
Yeah, that was
He
sad.
allowed Ken Livingstone to be branded an anti-Semite and to go through a process where he was kicked out of the Labour Party. And then the same thing happened to Jeremy Corbyn himself.
Yes, I remember.
And many other things. But I think I do appreciate some of the stuff that Jeremy Corbyn has done for Palestine and speaking up. But I personally think it's crumbs. And I don't think we should make him our leader. And I think too many Muslims have made him their leader.
Yeah.
So many other things I could go on about. But obviously we have a bit of a disagreement with our own base on Jeremy Corbyn. So I think the less we talk about it, the better.
Yeah, sure. Well,
We've made our point.
several times, but it still comes up every episode for some reason. But there you go. So that's the mysterious bearded fellow that we were referring to in the last episode that confused a bunch of you.
And he's an atheist. That's the other reason.
Yeah, he's an atheist.
That's the other issue I have.
Yeah.
I have an issue with all atheists, and he's one of them.
I just think that he let us down in hindsight, and I think we have to acknowledge
No,
that.
even at the time.
Well, yeah.
Because we were saying it at the time.
He let us down at the time, but with hindsight, we can now look back and see it for what it was, which was a failure of his leadership.
And when he was in power,
he
he
has to be held
hardly talked about Palestine as well, by the way. When he was actually a Labour leader, he put Palestine firmly on the back burner.
Yeah, I think if you knew Jeremy Corbyn before he became really famous, when he was just a backbench MP for all those years, I mean, he used to appear on Iranian state media talking about Zionism and how the two-state solution is a bad deal and stuff like that. He used to say all sorts of things.
No, he's always a
From what I remember, don't quote me exactly what his words were. I don't want to misrepresent it, but he spoke out about Zionism really well. Like he was known for that.
Doing that.
He stopped doing that immediately. Surrounded himself
Even
with
now,
bad
he doesn't talk about
advice.
Zionism, really.
Now he doesn't. No, and he talks about two-state solution all the time, which is just eye-rollingly annoying. And I just think that he failed, let us down, and he laid the groundwork for the Zionists to basically take over the
Yeah.
Labour Party, basically. And I think, yeah, like you said, he betrayed a lot of people on the way. So, we have to acknowledge these facts as well. We can't just go with
No,
all of his,
Muslims
all the
too
good
many
things.
Muslims are still drinking the Jeremy Corbyn Kool-Aid.
Yeah, because there were
And they need to
consequences to
stop
that.
doing that because
Yeah.
because we can't have an atheist leader who has, basically put his own mates under the bus as our leader.
It's just accountability, learning from mistakes and acknowledging those mistakes as well. There was another thing, final point, which came up again and again throughout the comment section on YouTube. Let me see what it is. I can't even remember what it was. I think Roshan did the right thing defending himself against... Oh, okay, so this is your altercation with the granny.
Yeah, I think most people agree with me.
The racist granny. So a lot of people were commenting on that. People were saying, I think Roshan did the right thing defending himself against this loony old hag. Otherwise, this type of Islamophobic attacks on Muslims will increase. Otherwise, they'll get on your nerves. Another comment came in saying, Assalamu alaikum, from personal experience, being an Eastern European convert to Islam for the past 28 years, more specifically from Romania, I have to say that the Islamophobia is rampant in Eastern Europe based on ignorance, false history regarding the Turkish caliphate, and a false superiority of the white race. So that was interesting to read as well, because you said that woman was probably from Eastern Europe.
I'm not sure about Romania, but somewhere.
Somewhere from Eastern Europe. So you got a lot of support, which you didn't initially get. I think a lot of people were criticizing you said, for this
Especially
altercation.
on Twitter, but Twitter has a kind of a strange audience. I think personally, our audience is more reflected on things like YouTube and even Telegram, and less reflected on Twitter, where you get a lot of non-Muslims just hating, but you also get a lot of Muslims who disagree with us that are of a certain kind of moderate bent. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people on YouTube were kind to you. They massaged your ego and said that you won that fight, whatever it was, with this old granny. But people on Twitter were basically saying that you lost that bout because you should have been more, I don't know, respectful to a racist.
Yes.
I don't know what that was. But
I
yeah.
should have done dawah to a racist.
While she's screaming in your face, calling you ugly or whatever it was.
I should turn the other cheek and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
She called you ugly, right?
No, I think she called Muslims ugly.
Oh, Muslims are ugly.
But it could have been me as well. And yeah, let's not talk about whether I'm ugly or not. Yeah.
Well, there you go, Roshan. Was there anything else you wanted to mention before we end the show?
No. I'm a little bit down today, after the surrender deal. And I hope that next week we might come on and maybe I would have changed my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we will monitor all these stories as we always do. And we'll be back again next week, hopefully, inshallah, the same time, same place, with more news from around the Ummah. With me, Robert Carton, Roshan, Mohammed Saleh. For now, it's Salaam Alaikum and Ma Salama. And don't forget to leave your comments in the comment section below. And inshallah, we'll react to them again next week.